Wait, don't skip ahead. I am Enclave Emily, and this is a clip from my Fallout show review where I talk about the date on the chalkboard and why it is a retcon and still remains a problem. Given how I'm away for the summer but have scheduled a few uploads, and how Season 2 is coming out in December, I thought it would be relevant to prepare for the inevitable resuming of this discussion that is going to be taking place in the coming weeks and months. Everything I say in this clip is still perfectly relevant to this exact day, and you do not need to have watched my review to understand what is said in this clip, because I include just enough for you to be able to follow along. Wherever you are and whenever you're watching this, I hope you're having a nice day, and I hope that this video helps you understand the problems with the dates. And who knows, maybe it'll bridge the gap you're having with someone else when the topic of the conversation is the Fallout show. Anyway, enjoy the clip, and there'll be a link to the full review in the description. Back at the vault, Maximus is being pampered by the vault dwellers to the tune of an oldies song, because of course he is. Given a robe, running water, and oysters which exist for some reason. And this is enough to convince him to start loving the vault. Meanwhile, Lucy is exploring the vault and sees it. Wait, what am I looking at? What the fuck am I looking? Freeze frame! Pause right there. Oh boy, the test of literacy. The test of literacy that people that complain about others not having media literacy don't pass for themselves. The chalkboard scene. Oh boy, I was waiting for this one. Let me give you a little bit of context. Let me give you a little bit of media literacy, if you will. I'm gonna give a slight, and by slight I mean major, but I don't give a fuck spoiler about this. But it was Hank who nuked Shady Sands when his wife Rose found out about civilization above ground. If you have a memory superior to that of a fish, you'll remember a lot of the details I've been telling you to remember this entire time. And if you do, great. If you don't, it goes like this. Let me tell you the timeline. This is what happened. Rose figures out that there is civilization above ground. Having figured this out, she takes her daughter, Lucy, above ground where they can live in not Shady Sands happily ever after away from the vault. But Hank, being part of Vault Tech, does not like this at all. So much like he did when he got elected, he manufactured a crisis to explain why he, Rose, and Lucy weren't there. That one being the famine, caused by a plague, the Great Plague of 77 as mentioned by Lucy. While Lucy is above ground, she sees the sun. Not long after, Hank arrives, takes Lucy back, and to stop any threats to his Vault Society and Vault Tech plan, he gets a nuke somehow. I guess he just opened the console and added that to his inventory, and nukes Shady Sands out of existence. When returning to the vault with Lucy, he comes up with the excuse as to why Rose is no longer there, saying that she starved in the famine caused by the Great Plague of 77. And to ensure that Lucy doesn't remember that she actually saw the sun, he tells her about the vault projector, and because she is just 6 at this point, she is told that what she actually saw wasn't the sun, but just the vault projector, so she doesn't realize she was in the outside world or remember it later. All of this was done with the aid of Betty, another Vault Tech employee who, while Hank was gone, was keeping an eye on things and keeping the narrative straight, coming up with excuses as to why Hank was not there while he was looking for Lucy. Moreover, according to the library ledger in the school in Not Shady Sands, we can see that logs stopped being recorded in 2276, which, although not entirely major, backs up the notion that something happened that stopped logs being recorded in 2276 or 2277. Whoever drew this graph was being very careful about the dates and the history of Shady Sands, because every single date in it is correct. This is all that the show has been telling us and reinforcing. So now I have one tiny, very simple questions and just a tiny doubt that I want to have answered. And that question is, and please be gentle with, how the fuck does nobody realize this is intentional retconning of Fallout New Vegas? Well, I say nobody, I mean the actual people who play Fallout and still defend this show. Of course there's the critics, but anyone who criticizes this show is apparently a media and history illiterate, completely ignoring the irony in that statement. Other than the fact that this show gang-fucked the lore of a lot of things and gang-fucked the location of where Shady Sands is even supposed to be, I have to ask, how the hell does this this show get every single date correct except this exact one? Am I supposed to believe that the show that gets every single date right got this very specific and very important date wrong? They could have said Shady Sands was founded slightly differently in terms of years. That wouldn't have been a big issue. They could have said that the new California Republic was created a year later or so, and that wouldn't have been a big deal, because a declaration does not mean a creation. But no, they got the date of 2277 for Shady Sands Falling, and in case you don't know, 2277 is the date of the first Battle of Hoover Dam and is also 200 years exactly after the war led to the end of the world. You could just say that they were trying to be poetic. 200 years after the atomic war, there is another atomic blast that ends civilization, but I am very, very fucking weirded out about the fact that they managed to get every single goddamn date correct except exactly this. In case you don't know, Fallout New Vegas is a game that takes place in 2281, but its story goes back to 2274. Although things only really come to a head in 2277, of course, when the first Battle of Hoover Dam takes place. Oh, what? Did you just think that the Fallout New Vegas footage that you're seeing in the background was random and that it had nothing to do with the fact that I was reviewing this, well, show? See, that's subtle contrast that a lot of people wouldn't have actually noticed. Shady Sands having fallen in 2277 makes 99% of the events in Fallout New Vegas outright impossible. And I say 99% because the 1% that actually is still possible is when the NCR enters the Mojave Desert in 2274. Every single person in the Mojave that knows anything about NCR says, yes, Shady Sands is fine, yes, it has some issues, but yes, Shady Sands is fine. The army's still there, the army hasn't retreated, the NCR is still clearly functioning perfectly, minus the fact that they don't want to send reinforcements to the Mojave because it's politically troubling. But there's not one single mention of anything like this ever happening, or even a single mention that anything like this might be happening. I guess it's just a coincidence that every single retcon that has happened so far are things that mainly destroy things that weren't created by Bethesda. And I think it's also just a coincidence that Shady Sands' location got moved. What Shady Sands is got moved. And I suppose it's also just a coincidence that this single chalkboard, along with everything the show has been telling us up to this point, makes one very specific game outright impossible to happen. And don't give me that bullshit about fall meaning decline, you stupid son of a bitch. There is an image there of a nuclear blast, but it's not dated, which means that the previous date mentioned is associated with whatever the image represents. Just accepting that cope for a moment, even if we completely disregard how chronological charts are made. The argument that, oh no, Shady Sands is actually in decline, that's still fucking stupid because it makes a lot of the things in New Vegas outright impossible, but let me tell you why that's bullshit. You see, the main cope around this argument saying that it's actually not retconning New Vegas is that the fall doesn't mean the fall, but means start of a decline. Because, and this is the most common example, the fall of Rome. Because I guess the fall of Rome was in 394 BC, and that's when we date the fall of Rome as happening. Because I guess Berlin actually fell in 1939 and not in 1945 in World War II. Because I guess the fall of Constantinople, the city, by the way, was actually in 1327 and not in 1453. It's a dumb fucking argument and completely ignores the fact that when we talk about the fall of Rome, which by the way isn't comparable to Shady Sands because one is an empire, the other is a city, but it's a dumb fucking argument because it ignores the fact that when we talk about the decline of Rome, we specifically use the word decline or start of the fall, and that fall of something means the end. The people who will tell you countless times, endlessly, will just grate it in your fucking ear about how you're a media illiterate person are completely illiterate themselves, and it relies entirely on your fucking ignorance to even work. Faithful adaptation to the show, good for the lore, adds new mysteries. Every single person who came up with that is a fucking idiot. Licking the boot of a bunch of paper-shuffling jackasses who can't stand the fact that people 25 fucking years ago wrote something better than they did, and that they have never come close to so much as touching the sole of the heel of the boot of the people who wrote this. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a New Vegas purist, aren't I? I guess the fall of Beijing during the fucking Sino-Japanese War of the 1930s and 40s actually happened in 1899, and that I'm just too media illiterate to understand that. Fuck every single one of you who defended this in my comment section and tried to educate me about how I don't know how to read a graph. Because apparently you can't either, as if you remember back from episode 1, this show had another chronological graph with images associated to it, and as we can clearly see from that graph, if the image does not represent a separate date, then it is not given a separate date. That's just a lot of coincidences, don't you think? They retconned Fallout 1 by putting Vault 33, 32, and 31 in pure eyesight of the cathedral. They changed Shady Sands' location to the Boneyard, completely eliminate the Boneyard from existence. They retconned retcon the ghouls, they retcon vault experiments, they retcon Fallout Tactics and Brotherhood of Steel, they rip off Fallout Tactics and Brotherhood of Steel, they retcon how ghouls even exist, they rewrite the Brotherhood of Steel, and now they completely eliminate Shady Sands using the very exact fucking year that would make Fallout New Vegas impossible. Oh, and before I forget, if you just say that they moved capitals to the Boneyard and renamed it to Shady Sands, well, why does the sign say first capital of the new California Republic and not second? Ugh, fucking hell, I could keep talking about this for longer than this fucking episode has any substance to it. But I'm not going to, because I have a lot of other things to say. Because you see, I think that they wanted to trash on the memory of everything that was old Fallout. I legitimately believe that everyone involved in the production of this show, story-wise, outright hates the West Coast, and want to destroy it on a fundamental level, spitting on the image of everything the West Coast was. And that was it. If you want to see the rest of the review, there's a link in the description. I did have to correct a little bit of my editing mistakes slightly, because this was my very first big project. So when you go watch that, if you go watch that, keep that in mind. And I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all when I come back in September or October. Bye-bye.